It is the ministry's pleasure to invite your participation as we encourage justices of the peace to keep abreast and knowledgeable on current developments in the law, government policies, and services. At this time, I'd like to invite you to stand for the national anthem. Amen. I'd like to remind that the national anthem is a prayer, so we can say amen at the end. I would, at this point in time, just to remind about some session protocol. So as you're aware, we're on the virtual platform, and so far we have had most of our invitees muted. In the event that your mic should become unmuted, please pay attention and as quickly as possible have your mics muted thereafter. For discussions, questions, and answers after the presentation, we will invite you to use the raise hand feature and await acknowledgement. As it relates to comments or questions that you may have during the presentation, then I'll indicate to you throughout the session. You may post those comments or questions in the chat. We will be monitoring the chat, as well as the NIDS team will be monitoring the chat to offer any assistance for your comments or questions. In terms of a reminder, justices of the peace, if you have not filed your annual report for 2023 with your customs, please do so now. It's not too late. We'd love to hear from you, and so we welcome your submission of your annual report for 2023. So we're going to start now. We say the Ministry of Justice looks forward to this evening's session, partnering with NIDS, the Office of the Prime Minister, to build understanding and awareness among our justices of the peace on Jamaica's identification system, providing the platform for better access through communication of justice matters and seeking your feedback. At this time, the ministry wishes to acknowledge a presence. Well, the minister has not quite joined us as yet, but he should be joining us shortly. The Minister of Justice, the Honorable Mr. Delroy Chuck, our Permanent Secretary, Mrs. Grayson Stewart McFarlane, Custos Rotilorum of St. James, and Chairman for the National Identification and Registration Authority, the Honorable Bishop Conrad Pipkin, Custos Rotilorum of Portland, the Honorable Mr. Lincoln Thaxter, other Honorable Custodies who have joined us, the Program Director, Dr. Warren Vernon, Program Director for NIDS, our Chief Technical Director at the Ministry of Justice, Mrs. Kayla Sewell Mills, our Enrollment Outreach Officer who will be presenting to us tonight, Ms. Nicola Green, officials of the Ministry of Justice, most important, most appreciated, our justices of the peace who have joined this platform. I've noted that over 700 have registered, so I'm looking forward to seeing all 700 on the platform for tonight. At this time, I will invite the Honorable Lincoln Anthony Thaxter, Customs of Portland, to offer prayer. You're muted. We're still not able to hear you, Custos Thaxter. Custos Thaxter, you're muted. What I'll say to you, please, if you could just log out and log back on so we can hear from you. Justices of the peace, we have been having some technical difficulties as it relates to the mic. There seem to be some issue once you're muted and you attempt to unmute, then we're having a challenge. So Custos Thaxter, please, could you log out and rejoin? If Custos Thaxter is able to hear me, so justices of the peace, as we await Custos Thaxter to rejoin us to bless this session, I would like to just say to the 200 justices that are now online that the Ministry of Justice continues this program of bringing information on current laws, policies, and services that is within the public domain. And we're relying on our justices of the peace to be credible sources of information, to convey this information to the public and for your own benefit and for your family as well. The NIDS is a very important national identification. You will recall in 2021, I believe, that we would have had our first sensitization over, I think, 2 days on NIDS. That is when we're just introducing it. There has been some significant progress as it relates to NIDS, and that we're at the point of near implementation. And so it is now timely for us to have a presentation on NIDS. And we particularly wanted to re-engage with you because at the time when we had done the sensitization, there was a number of requests asking whether the Justice of the Peace credential could be carried on this national identification. And our Minister of Justice indeed did lobby, and we would have gotten the support from NIDS and NERO so that once you have your national identification, you will have the JP credential affixed. I am just going to check to see if Custos Thaxter has rejoined. And so this is what you call laying your hands suddenly. I would like to lay my hands suddenly on Custos Pitkin to see if Custos Pitkin is in a position to offer prayer.
And you hear me?
Yes, I'm hearing you clearly, Custos.
All right. So I invite everyone to pause with me as we Pray. Our gracious and loving Lord, to you we bow our hearts in gratitude and thankfulness for your goodness and your mercies towards us. Thank you for your blessings upon us as a nation. This evening, as we are gathered for this sensitization session, we pray for your guidance for the presenters. Bless our minister Chuck in a special way and his family, and Father, the, the team that works alongside him in the Ministry of Justice. Pray that each participant, after exiting this platform, would have left with more information than when they came, enough, Lord, to share and to impart with others and be able to execute their duties in a professional manner. Grant this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you very much, Costa speaking. And as we heard the blessings from Costa Spitkins, I would like to introduce the Honorable Costa Spitkins to invite him to bring greetings. Costas is indeed the Costas of St. James, and he is the chairman of the National Identification and Registration Authority. And so, Costas Spitkins, back to you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moncrief Wigan, and pleasant good evening. To the Honorable Minister Chuck in his absence, Mrs. Grace Ann Stewart McFarlane, Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Justice, Honorable Custodies, Ministry of Justice team members, esteemed Justices of the Peace, and distinguished guests, a pleasant good evening. I would like to express my gratitude to the Minister for the opportunity to share insights on the work we are doing at the newly established National Identification and Registration Authority, NIRA. Equally, we welcome the opportunity to hear from you, our Justices of the Peace, knowing the significant role that you play in establishing identification in the various communities where you serve, and the pivotal role that you play and will play continuing to certify documents required for the enrollment of eligible persons in the National Identification System, which is in short NIDS. Joining me today, Mrs. Wigan, from the NIDS Project Office, which is in the Office of the Prime Minister, are Dr. Warren Fernan, our Program Director, Ms. Kamika Facey, Legal Consultant, Ms. Althea Bennett, PR and Marketing Manager, and Ms. Nicole Green, our Enrollment Outreach Officer. Ms. Bennett will make a brief presentation on the National Identification Program, a significant step toward a more secure and efficient identification document for all Jamaicans. The rest of the project team will provide support during the Q&A session. The project office is a temporary office established to support the implementation of critical activities such as the legal framework system and infrastructure to operationalize the authority. We thank the project office for its contribution to the National Identification Program. As you may be aware, JPs, the new authority is now leading the remaining phase of the National Identification Program in preparation for going live under the governance and leadership of the National Identification and Registration Authority. The authority was established by an Act of Parliament to provide national identification and civil registration services such as registration of birth, marriages, deaths, and other services now being carried out by the Registrar General's Department. To give you more context, His Excellency the Most Honorable Sir Patrick Allen nominated me to join the National Identification and Registration Authority as the custody's representative. Since my appointment, I've appreciated the authority's unique governance arrangement. The members of the authority are prescribed in the Act to ensure the effective and efficient management of the authority. The membership includes the appointment of a representative of the Jamaica umbrella groups of churches, a representative from the private sector organization, a custos rotarium nominated by the Governor General, a cybersecurity expert, an attorney at law with at least 15 years standing, being a member of the Bar of Jamaica, along with several other specialized areas. The Governor General appoints the members on the advice of the Prime Minister after consultation with the leader of the parliamentary opposition. I am also honored to work with a team of competent and dedicated professionals. As we put our faith to work, we will collectively create a culture of service excellence at the authority for the betterment of Jamaica, the land we so love. Since the authority, ladies and gentlemen, has been established earlier this year, we have reviewed and submitted its regulation to the minister, which were approved by both houses of parliament. We have since established all the committees prescribed by the Act for the efficient and effective governance of the authority. We have completed the authority's governance policy and operating procedures and are in the process of defining the authority's key performance indicators. Based on our current status, we will go live this year. And I want to hear that loud and clear. We will go live this year once we complete some. And so for the sensitization session this evening, it is crucial to us. We are mindful of the critical role you play as justice of the peace, the role that you play in your communities, and your past, present, and future contributions cannot be overestimated. As custodians of peace and justice, you're oftentimes many Jamaicans' first point of contact. Today, we want to equip you with the facts about the National Identification Card, NIC, to empower you to share information about this vital tool. We empower you knowing that we live in a world where misinformation and disinformation constantly compete with truth. The National Identification Card is not just a card. It is a secure and trusted platform that verifies a person's identity with consent. This protects individuals from fraud and streamlines crucial processes across various sectors. Think about the countless instances where verifying someone's identity is vital. Opening a bank account, accessing government services, applying for travel document, and many, many more. With its secure verification services, the new free national identification card facilitates these processes with greater efficiency and accuracy, eliminating the barriers to getting a voluntary, secure, trusted identification document if your parents so decide from birth. Notwithstanding these benefits, the solid legal framework, governance arrangement, and strong system controls, we can only make national identification a reality with you, the justices of the peace, as the vanguard in the certification of legacy information necessary for enrollment in the national identification system. The authority depends on you to be that vanguard. Whenever you sign the address verification form for persons, whenever you certify a photograph to prove that you know someone, and continue to do so with integrity and accuracy. Justice of the peace, we can work together to make Jamaica a more secure and efficient nation through your understanding and active participation. Your support can create an identification document with a trusted and secure reputation. We are here to partner with you to provide the resources you need to confidentially share the benefits of a secure national identification document within your communities. Thank you for your time and dedication, and I'm sure since God will tell you, and so will the minister when he come, that when the card get into activity and begin to be produced, every justice of the peace who you will be under your identification card, signifying that you are in fact a JP. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. God bless you. God bless Jamaica, land we love. One love, JPs.
Thank you very much, Custos Pitkin, and should I say Chairman of NERO. At this time, I would like to invite our Honorable Minister Delroy Chuck, Minister of Justice, to bring remarks.
I am actually attending a function. And can you hear me, Julia?
Yes, we're hearing you clearly, sir.
All right. I just want to thank all the GPs who are there and to endorse everything that just Custos Pitkin has said. And I really expect that there will be a significant interaction between the GPs and the presenters. I wish you to have a very good afternoon sensitization. Please excuse me, but I think you need all the time to interact. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you very much, Minister Chuck. So we're at that point in time where we're going to introduce Ms. Nicola Green, the Enrollment Outreach Officer out of the Office of the Prime Minister on the NIDS project. She will be making her presentation on Jamaica's National Identification System. Ms. Nicola, can you go ahead, please?
All right, let me just share my screen. All right, and let me say good evening, everyone. And I would just like to thank Julia and the Ministry of Justice for the invitation extended to the NIDS team to make this presentation to you. You know, we are always excited to share factual and accurate information with you, our valued stakeholders. So I'm so excited, I'm just gonna dive right in now. So we are going to be discussing the National Identification Card and NIRA, the authority that manages its production and issuance. All right, so the first thing we're going to look at is NIRA itself. So NIRA is a body corporate established under the National Identification and Registration Act of 2021. I'm sorry, there's a, all right, I think I have that now. Yes, and it is responsible for Jamaica's national identification and civil registration services. So NIRA is empowered by law to issue citizens and ordinary residents of Jamaica with a national identification card under the National Identification System. It is also responsible for managing the civil registration services that are currently being carried out by the RGD. Okay, we will now look at a body called the National Identification and Registration Inspectorate, and this is actually the body who will provide oversight to the National Identification and Registration Authority. The National Identification and Registration Inspectorate, for short, NIRI. So NIRI will monitor compliance with the Act and regulations, monitor the performance of the authority, conduct periodic audits and assessments of the authority's operation to determine compliance, make recommendations to the authority to improve the operational standards, and also to investigate issues and complaints regarding the authority. Now, what is NIDS? NIDS is an information system that is used to facilitate the production and verification of the National Identification Card. This system, NIDS, utilizes 3 biometrics: your facial image, your fingerprint, and a manual signature. And these combined will help to accurately verify the enrolled individual. NIRA, as any other company, has to have a framework that governs its operation. So let's look at NIRA's legal framework. This framework, or NIRA's legal framework, is grounded in the Constitution of Jamaica. It is established by the National Identification and Registration Act that is now in force, except for the functions of the RGD. It is subject to the Data Protection Act and regulations and is responsible for the assignment of the registration numbers under the Revenue Administration and Tax Administration Acts. It also leverages the Electronic Transaction Act, is guided by the Anti-Money Laundering Act or legislation, and is operationalized by the regulations made under the National Identification and Registration Act, the Electronic Transaction Act, and the Revenue Administration Act. Now, there are some regulations that also govern NIRA. There are 5 of them, and we will look at them now. The first is the National Identification and Registration Regulation 2024. The first one speaks to general matters such as application to enroll, cancellation, and the renewal of enrollment. The second, information security, outlines how the authority will manage information security and protect personal data. The third, assignment of the national identification number, sets out how an individual is assigned a national identification number, otherwise called a NIN, in collaboration with TAJ. The fourth, appeal tribunal, outlines how an enrolled individual may challenge the authority's decision. And the last one, identity services, outlines how accredited third parties verify identity information and authenticate the national ID card. So we will now look at the life cycle of enrollment for the national identification card, which we know is voluntary. Now, the first step is that an individual has to apply to be enrolled in the system. The applicant's data is collected at the enrollment site. Then the applicant's data is verified or vetted. Next, the verified identity information is entered into the national databases, the national identification databases. And once that happens, the applicant becomes an enrolled individual. Once enrolled, this individual is issued with a number and an ID card. We'll now look at some data protection considerations. NIRA is a data controller. And as a data controller, NIRA is subject to the Data Protection Act of 2020. So NIRA will process personal data, including certain sensitive personal data, and the regulations must also be fully compliant with the principles and provisions of the Data Protection Act. NIRA has 8 data protection standards that it must abide by. The first is lawfulness, fairness, and transparency. This means that personal data, which is information about you and me, must be processed lawfully, fairly, and in a transparent manner in relation to you, the data subject. Purpose limitation. This speaks to NIRA being able to collect and process personal data for a specific and lawful purpose, and it cannot use the data for any other purpose for which it was initially intended. Data minimization. NIRA will not collect more information or cannot collect more information than is necessary for the particular purpose of processing. Accuracy. Personal data must be accurate and kept up to date. And NIRA will take all reasonable steps to ensure that inaccurate personal data is erased or rectified without delay. 5, storage limitation. NIRA will not keep data for longer than is necessary and is required to dispose of it according to the Data Protection Act. Integrity and confidentiality. NIRA will process personal data in a manner that ensures appropriate security, including protection against unauthorized or unlawful processing, accidental loss, destruction, or damage, using appropriate technical and organizational measures. Accountability. NIRA is responsible for and must be able to demonstrate compliance with data protection principles. And the final one is that NIRA will only, which is transfer across international bodies. The data controller may only transfer personal data across international borders in accordance with the Data Protection Act. All right, so let's look at how our information can be disclosed. NIRA will only disclose identity information in the following three circumstances. One, by the request and consent of the enrolled individual, you and me. So you and I will have to expressly give NIRA permission to disclose our information to a third party. The next way that our data can be disclosed is by the order of a judge. And the third way is as required under the Act or any other law that is in force. I'm sorry, I just lost my presentation. Let's just bear with me a moment while I try to retrieve it. All right. All right. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, Nicola, I can see it.
Great. All right. All right. So let us now look at some security considerations for the National Identification Card and NIRA. All right. So, in full compliance with the National Identification and Registration Act, Section 23 to be exact, NIRA ensures the security management of identity information. So NIRA encrypts all identity information, including your fingerprints, your facial images of the enrolled persons. The government has invested in a national PKI to support this infrastructure, and the newly implemented e-passport has benefited from this infrastructure to date. All right, two, by design, fingerprints are not shared with third parties. And I am sure everybody listening on this platform must be saying, that's good news. Instead, a pattern of the enrolled person's fingerprint, not the full fingerprint, but just a pattern of the print, is stored on the card for authentication. So the cardholder's PIN is required to access information stored on the card. Next, identity information access is logged. The identity owner is notified for transparency. Access to personal information is restricted. Your information is restricted to authorized officers who provide services only to enrolled persons. Access to personal information is logged. And so each time your information is accessed, a digital log is created. Strong physical and logical security to manage risks. All right, we will now look at some examples of offenses and penalties under the Act. So, if someone should submit false information as proof of the express consent of an enrolled individual, this can attract a fine of up to $1 million or imprisonment or both in the parish court. The next one we will look at is breach of duty of secrecy and confidentiality. That is from Section 30 of the Act. And if a breach occurs, the person who commits this breach will be fined $3 million and or imprisonment in the parish court, or up to $10 million and or imprisonment in the circuit court. Now, let us now look at the National identification card in some more details. Now, a lot of persons across Jamaica have been saying, why do we need a national identification card? Do we really need a national identification card? We have been doing great so far because we have so many identity documents already. Now, let us look at all the identification documents that Jamaica currently has. What's on your screen here represents the bulk of them. You know, I know there may be others. For example, I went to a school the other day and one young man, he mentioned an acronym and said, what about that? And I was oblivious to what this meant until he enlightened my darkness. And I learned of the firearms identity card that firearm holders carry. All right, so there you go. So this, so I no longer say these are the documents that we have. I say these are the majority of the documents that people use in major situations to identify themselves. So on here we have passport, TRN, voter's ID, school ID, and driver's license. We also have NIS. So let's look at these. We know that the passport and the driver's license, though they match all the necessary criteria for an identification document because it possesses a picture and your signature, they come at a cost. And unfortunately, there are many Jamaicans who cannot afford to bear that kind of cost to get an ID. The TRN number, though a unique identifier of an individual, does not bear a picture or a signature. And so anybody can take up anybody else's TRN card and pretend to be them and conduct business on their behalf. Another one, the school ID card, well, as the name suggests, you have to be enrolled in an educational institution in order to get an ID card there. And what's more, there are many, many, many schools in Jamaica who do not do an ID card, right? Yes, many, many schools. Of my 6 nieces and nephews currently enrolled in school, not one of them, no, one has an ID card, 1 of 6. Don't know if that's some kind of a percentage, but there you go. All right, now let us look at the voter's ID. True, the voter's ID has a signature, it has your picture, and it has a unique number for the individual. But you have to be 18 years or older to get this ID. So what it means is that persons under the age of 18 would have to wait until they're 18 years old in order to get an ID card, unless their parents are able to get a passport for them. So currently, Jamaica really and truly does not have a national ID, because as it is saying, a national ID should really be for all citizens of a country, and children under 18 are citizens of our country, but wouldn't be able to get a national ID. Sorry, a voter's ID. All right, we are now going to look at the national identity card in greater details. So this card will be available from birth. It is free, and as said before, it uses minimum biometrics in order to guarantee that a person will have one identity. Let's look at the number. All right, so each person registering for the card will be assigned a unique registration number called the National Identification Number, or the NIN, as previously said. So this NIN is identical to the registration number assigned to by the TAJ, or the tax office. every NIDS applicant must submit a registration number. So if you are applying for the national ID card and you don't have a registration number, or you don't remember what your registration number is, then you must complete and submit an application form to be assigned a registration number by the tax office of Jamaica during the enrollment process. All right, so let's look at who is able to enroll for a national ID card. All Jamaicans of Jamaica can enroll to get an identity card. In addition to all Jamaicans, individuals who ordinarily reside in Jamaica are also able to get an identity card. And these are individuals who have been living in Jamaica for 6 months or more. So who can get the card? All citizens and all residents living here 6 months and older. So of course, this includes babies, children, adults, persons with disabilities, persons with mental disorders, the elderly. All means all. Okay. Now, of course, we know that the national identification card or enrolling for one is absolutely voluntary. So let's look at the voluntary enrollment and cancellation process. Enrollment in the system is absolutely voluntary, as said before, and an applicant is able to withdraw their application, and an enrolled individual can cancel their enrollment at any time. What this means is, as a parent, you enroll your child. The child is young, a baby, and cannot give consent. But the child gets old and becomes 18 years old. The child can then make a decision. Do I want to have this ID card? Do I want to be enrolled in this system? And if, having thought about it, the child decides, no, I don't think this is for me, they can actually visit an enrollment center and say, I want out. And then the process begins of canceling their enrollments or de-enrolling them in the system. All right. So what are the types of information that will be collected during the enrollment process? Your name, your date of birth, your country of birth, your place of birth, your mother and father's name if available, your sex, or whether you're a male or female as recorded on your birth certificate, the principal place where you live, and also the other places where you live, the nationality and the period of residence in Jamaica, and this is for persons who are non-residents. Also, your marital status and the name of your spouse, if applicable. The biometric information that will be collected are, again, your facial image, your fingerprint, and your signature. And this is in the case of an individual who is 18 years or older. Other types of information that will be collected are your birth entry number, your passport number, your registration number assigned by TAJ, the electoral registration number, and where applicable, your driver's license number, your NIS, and path numbers. All right, so let's look at the ID card. What you're seeing on your screen now is what the ID card will look like. I'm going to shift over to the next screen now, but I just want you to take a good glance because the picture is going to get smaller, but we will still be talking about the picture. All right? So on the front of the card, you will have information that types of information that will be on the card is the national identification number that is assigned to the individual at enrollment, the name of the authority that issues the card, which is NERO, the name, date of birth, facial image, and manual signature of the individual, as well as the nationality. Now, what you're seeing on your screen right now are some verification features that will be attached to the front of the card. Now, I know you perhaps can't read very clearly what these are, but just know that there are 6 verification features on the front of the card that will be used to verify the authenticity of the card itself. And, you know, these are features that you cannot necessarily see with the naked eye. You have to put them under UV light. You have to twist and hold the card a certain way, all different kind of ways to verify that the ID, which cannot be duplicated by simply copying or, you know, try to what do you call it now? When you try to fabricate something, right? So just like how it's near impossible to fabricate our money, same thing with this ID card because of those hidden features. So this is what the back of the card looks like. And again, I will give you a moment to take in as much as you can because we're going to move to a smaller version of the back of the card while we look more closely at the things that are on the back of the card. So on the back of the card, the parish or place of enrollment will be noted or specified, the date of issuance, as well as the expiry date of the card, the control number of the card, whether you're a male or female, and of course, as recorded on the birth certificate, and whether you are a citizen or a resident. Now, I'm not sure. So if you look closely on the card, you will see on the top left-hand side the word status. And you will see a C under status. So C in this case represents someone who is a citizen of Jamaica. If you are a resident, then you will not see a C there, you will see the letter R. And if you are a JP, which in your case you are, your status section will say CJP. All right? So in addition to that, if you are a member of the disability community, you will have you will be able to have the disability symbol displayed on the back of the card if you would like it to be so. Now, these are the verification features that are on the back of the card. There are 5 of them. All right? There are 5 of them. And of course, as with the front of the card, the same security features apply to these as well. So how does one go about renewing the ID card? For persons who are younger than 18 years old, the ID card will be valid for 5 years from the date of issue and will be renewable every 5 years until that individual becomes 18 years old. So once a person is 18 years of age or older, the card will be valid for 10 years from the date of issue and is renewable every 10 years until the lifetime or expiration of the individual. All right, so we will quickly look at some benefits. The first major benefit is that the NIDS ID or the National Identification Card is free. You don't have to pay a penny to get it, and anyone can get it. All right. 2, it protects and secures. It prevents identity theft and fraud with respect to your identity information. Transparency and identity verification. It gives more control and knowledge to the enrolled individual over their identity information. And this is because whenever your identity is verified, you, the enrolled individual, will get a notification that your identity has been verified by X place or Y place. And as a matter of fact, you also need to give consent for your identity to be verified. Another benefit is that we will now only be able to travel around one ID. And I think for most of us that we're really looking forward to this one. You know, our purses and our wallets are just full of plastic, this and that. And, you know, if any at all you can take out one or two, it will be a benefit. I'm sure, I know I will benefit from it. My wallet sometimes is trying to burst at the zipper. I'm just trying to close it, you know. So for this, knowing I won't need to be traveling around with so many additional cards in my purse is a bonus for me. All right, so the other 4 benefits we will look at is simplification of bureaucracy. And this one says that it reduces the need for identity verification from the JP. Now the JPs must be saying, what? I'm becoming obsolete? No, you're not. No, you're not. NIDS, once you have this ID, yes, it is true that the person who owns a national identification card will not need you to verify their identity again, but everybody else who does not have an ID card will still require you to verify their identity. Besides, verifying people's identity was never one of your main functions. It only became one of your main functions because of the crisis we have in Jamaica with persons not being able to properly identify themselves. So now, JPs, you can actually go back to some of your core functions. All right, I'm sure you're saying, that sounds kind of good. All right, so the next one is easier access to benefits. Now, this one specifically relates to pensioners. And some of you may be pensioners. My father is a pensioner, and it is really irritating to me to every quarter have to be running to a JP to ensure that his life certificate is signed up so that little tuppence can keep rolling. Now, if a pensioner were to get a national ID card, this part of it will be eliminated for them. They would no longer need to verify their identity because, they won't need to do it anymore. All right. The next one is digital signature. So having a NIDS card allows you to be able to sign documents electronically. Good benefit. And the final benefit that we will look at is financial services, where it becomes so much easier to conduct business and financial transactions online or in branch with a bank. And I believe that takes us to the end of the presentation for tonight. I know time was very limited, so we couldn't give you the full presentation, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to encourage you to come on out to your parish sessions where you will get the full presentation each time. All right. Thank you so very much for your patience and your attention. And if there are any questions, I would take them now.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nicola, for this presentation. So I would like to first start out. I've seen a couple of questions in the chat. And we also have persons joining us on the ministry's YouTube channel. We have over 402 JPs joining us from that side, and they had posed some questions. I'm going to take those from the YouTube first. And so let me indicate to you the first question that they would have asked. Patrick Ferguson is asking, just make it mandatory, or he's making a statement, just make it mandatory for all citizens to issue a passport. Every Jamaican should have gotten their first passport free. That is a statement. I'm not sure where that is going. Nicola is querying whether, Master Nemard is querying whether if the ID is initially free, if it is misplaced or lost for renewal or replacement, will it be at a cost?
Okay, thank you for that question. So the ID is free initially and will continue to be free when it expires and has to be renewed. If the card is damaged or lost, there will be a minimum replacement fee attached to the card.
Thank you. Again, from the YouTube, they're asking the question, this is Damian Dawkins, will your data be purged from the system if you wish not to be enrolled? And Calvin Abrams is asking, when one wishes to cancel their application, does it mean that the information will be discarded?
Okay, I am not sure if the first question and the same question are the same, because the first one says, if you don't want to be enrolled, could you repeat?
Right, will your data be purged? Will it
So
be
if you,
removed, or will you
I am going to make the assumption that both of them are the same, because your data would have to be in the database in order for a purging to happen. So if you are enrolled in the system and you desire to exit, the majority of your data will be destroyed or purged, but minimum amount of information about you must be maintained. And let me give you a reason why. If I enroll in the system and then I do something that is unlawful, and perhaps I get a criminal record or something, and then further I want to assume a new identity because of my crimes. If I then go to the enrollment center and say, I don't want to have this ID anymore, and the enrollment center destroys all of my information, including very basic information about me, then what it allows me to do is come back tomorrow with new identity documents, whether a new passport or whatever else I want to create as new identity documents, and come and enroll. And if there is no fail-safe in the system to say this person has been here before, then I can enroll as somebody different. And we can't allow that to happen, because that is really a breach of identity, even for you, that person. So no, there will be basic amount of information that will be maintained to protect the integrity of the identity system.
Okay, a raised hand from Mr. Anthony Duncan. Mr. Hofstede, can you unmute him, please, so that Mr. Anthony Duncan can put his question forward while we await Anthony Duncan? Question was posed as to whether the NIDS number, identification number, is it going to be the same as the TRN?
Yes, I am sorry, in my haste to try and get through the presentation, I obviously did not make that connection properly. On the slide that spoke to the national identification number, I did indicate that the registration number and the number issued by TAJ is one and the same. So if you have been issued with a number by the tax office before, which is your TRN number, then that automatically becomes your registration number at enrollment. So it is called a registration number because those who do not have a TRN number, who needs to register for the national ID and is given this number, it will not be a TRN number initially. And so we have to refer to the number to enroll as a registration number. That's a registration number. But if you do have a TRN number, that is a number that will be used as your registration number.
Okay. Duncan, if you have unmuted, you can go ahead and pose a question right after Custis Green. I have unmuted you. So after Duncan, you can go ahead and speak.
Good evening. It's actually Don, not Duncan. The question I have is, you mentioned that NIDS is not mandatory, right, in terms of signing up for NIDS. And so the question I have is, in all some of the rhetoric, NIDS was always seen as helping to prevent fraud going forward and identity theft. If you're allowing the old system, as we call it in quote now, to operate still alongside NIDS, how will you minimize that fraudulent activity through the old system while having NIDS where other people are signing up on, especially for identity fraud?
All right, let me see if I can. All right, so I think what you're saying is if we make NIDS voluntary, how do we protect against identity fraud and theft generally? Is that what you're asking? All right. I guess he has been muted. I neglected to say, although Custis Pitkin did say that we do have some other members of the team online. Dr. Warren Vernon, the project director. We also have our legal officer, Kamika Facey. I am not sure if I understood the question correctly, but I'm not getting a clarification. So I'm going to ask one of you if you can shed some more light on this for me, please.
While we await your technical team's assistance, Custis Green, would you like to put forward your question, please?
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. I noticed on the card, I did not see an address of residential address. Was that correct?
Yes, that is correct. The decision has been taken not to put the address of the individual on the card, and one of the main reasons for that is because as Jamaicans, we tend to move very frequently. And you don't want a situation where you apply today and in 2 months' time you change address. And then you have to be coming back into the enrollment center to update and get a new card. So what happens after you change your address? You simply visit the enrollment center and say, my address has been changed. This is the new address, and it will just be updated in the system so that when your identity is verified, you don't have to worry about that element.
Right, that's clear and understood. But my thing is, in most cases, for example, if you're stopped by the
you're very low. Can you speak more to your microphone, please?
Any better?
All right, go ahead. Yes.
Right. In some cases, like when you're stopped by the police or you go to the bank to do business, you're asked, your address is needed. So, but I noticed the presentation said it will be one ID, it replaces all other IDs. So what if we are, or if we need to verify our addresses? I know at the bank, once you present a national electoral ID, they accept the address that is on that card. So I'm thinking now that we'd have to still walk with 2 ID cards. The
No,
NIDS along
because
with,
no, you won't need to do that because, as I said before, once your address is updated in the system, once your address needs to be verified, that is how it is done. It does not necessarily need to be on the card. And bear in mind that, you know, with electoral ID, a lot of us don't live where we were first, where from an address that is first attached to our IDs, you know, so, you know, that's also something to consider. But as I said, the main reason that it does not need to be on there is that the third party will be seeking verification
to
through
the
NIRO.
database, through the database.
Right. Yes.
Okay. All right. My follow-up question to that though is that I know many Jamaicans live at places that can't be verified, that have no addresses, eh? No street number, no street name. How would we be able to verify where those persons live?
All
And I'm only
right.
assuming that JPs will be required to, I'm not sure if JPs will be required to verify the identity and persons' addresses for when they're applying for the NIDS. I don't know.
Okay, so you're correct. There are many Jamaicans, example, homeless people who actually live on the street. They also have rights as citizens, and they are also eligible to get an ID. So how will that be treated? When the presentation was being made, it says your address or other areas of regular residence. So if Big Tree is where you live, then Big Tree is your address. So if that is a place where typically you can be found, because as a homeless person, you hang around Big Tree most of the time, then that is where it is expected that someone will be able to come and find you. So you mentioned JP. So as a JP, then this JP certifying this address, the address of this particular individual will need to know that this is where this person hangs mostly.
But Miss Green, let us say someone says I live in Lane, St. Elizabeth. Lane is a big community that has several smaller communities, right? But they just say Lane, St. Elizabeth. They can't provide a street name nor a gate number. Is that acceptable?
Well, obviously, during the enrollment process, there has to be, I'm sure there'll be considerations that take those things into consideration. For example, if you live in Kingston, it is easy for you to provide a street address and a number. But for communities that don't readily have that kind of information, then there are other ways the information will be vetted as a part of the enrollment process. So that is how it will have to work, because you can't, everybody has an address. And if your address is Nain PO Box, then that is your address, because that is where you typically receive your mail. So I'm going to ask my colleagues if they can add more to this response, that they go ahead and do so now.
So Dr. Vernon, you can just unmute your mic. Miss Facey, I've also requested for you to unmute your mic, so you can go ahead to do that and respond. Also, Ms. Bennett, also you can also respond to some of the comments that are in the chat because we're getting quite a few questions and commentary. While we, I guess, try to figure out for Dr. Vernon and Miss Facey, I'm going to ask us to speak in to go ahead and unmute his mic and raise his question or response. So Ms. Facey has indicated that she has given a response regarding the address, but we are not hearing her. So if she could just post the answer in the chat, I will read it to the justices of the peace. While we sort that out, let me randomly pick a couple more questions from the chat. Evelyn Walcott, she's asking, my question is, will the institutions have a card reader to verify the card holder's information?
Yes, it is expected that every third party will put in the necessary infrastructure in order to properly verify someone's identity.
Okay. Ms. Facey has responded in the chat to advise that all principal places of residence will be verifiable. There may be places without numbers or even by the, is it document? I hope that answers Custos Green's concerns. She noted that Google location codes will be utilized for those particular individuals. I'm assuming those that do not have numbers at their place of residence. On the YouTube, they're asking, this is from Christine Drackett or Drackett. I may not be pronouncing it right. I want to know how much is minimal biometric data required?
All right, as stated before, the 3 biometrics that will be used in order for the production of the national identification card are your facial image or your picture, your fingerprint, and a manual signature. Those are the only 3 biometric information that will be required to enroll.
Okay. If your marital status, this is from a comment in the YouTube chat, if your marital status, that's Portmore Ministers Fraternal, if your marital status changes within a year of receiving the card, how do we update, and is there a cost?
No, there will not be a cost to updating information. If your marital status or anything else about you changes before the card reaches its renewal date, you simply need to visit an enrollment site, provide the documentation to support these changes. The information will be inputted into the system, and that will be that. Next time someone needs to verify your information or your identity, the new information is what will be presented.
Okay. Someone in the chat is asking, when will the NIDS card be implemented? Second, there's still a general concern from Kim Davis on YouTube saying, I'm very concerned about security and human rights. All of what you said is lovely and well put together with all the pros. What are the cons? First and biggest on the list is security of my biometric. And another point is, with NIDS having so much verified information, can a citizen enter the island with the NIDS card?
Enter, all right, so there are several things there. One, when will the card be implemented? I do not have a specific date, but it will be sometime soon. I'm not sure how many of us have been following the news, but the regulations were recently passed. And with the passing of these regulations, then NERA is now able to start issuance of the card. So we are just crossing the I's and dotting the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. So very soon, I can't give a specific date, but very soon. So that was the first question. The second question was about data protection.
Yes, data security in terms of the biometrics, there's still a concern and unease. And then the third point is, given all the information that is being utilized to verify a citizen, can that said ID be used to enter the island? If you're off island, can they use a NIDS card to enter?
Okay, so let me deal with the last one first. So yes, just as so the thinking is, when a citizen or a permanent resident who has this ID comes in at our ports of entry, they will be able to use their ID card to come in through the electronic gates, through the e-gates. So yes. All right, as it concerns security of the data, particularly, well, any data, because it's not just your biometrics that's critical. All your data is critical. NERA considers all data to be critical and which needs to be protected equally. So some of the things that are going into the securing of your data is, one, at enrollment, your documentation that you take to the enrollment site, you will leave with it. So the person who you interact with or interface with, who takes your document and input into the system, will not be allowed to photocopy or keep your information. It is handed back to you. Another thing that is being put in place in order to safeguard or secure your identity is that the information there, first of all, there are several databases. So it's not going to be just one database, one ginormous database that will have all the information on it. There will be several databases with different information sets. So for example, your fingerprints will not be stored where your birth certificate is and other types of information. It will all be all over the place. So if someone were able to hack any one of the databases, they wouldn't be able to access your full information. So that's one thing. Additionally, the information that is inputted into the database will be encrypted, so that if a person is able to hack the database and gets access to someone's information or some part of your information, they will not be able to link it back to you directly. They will have to, because the information will be codified, right? In addition to that, persons who are employed to the enrollment site have varying levels of access. So a supervisor has more access than the enrollment officer, and that supervisor has a manager, and it goes up the chain. So with this varying levels of access, comes a level of security, because the higher your clearance level, the more information about a person you at the enrollment center will be able to access. So me as an enrollment officer can't really get back your information. I am just able to input into the system. And one of the final things I will say to this is that as a part of a safeguard to protect your identity the best way possible, because the truth is that no system is foolproof. If you want to store everything in a filing cabinet, fire can come and burn it up. just same way someone can hack a database. So NERO will employ ethical data hackers, and their job will simply be to pound that system, pound it and pound it and pound it to try to infiltrate it. And by so doing, we will be able to identify where the weaknesses are and be able to plug those gaps.
Okay. In the chat, this person, Lloyd Dawes from Westmoreland, he wants to know, where do I find a center for my parish? I'm, for instance, in Westmoreland. So that person would like to know that. And Brian Lee Toller, he's asking, can I update my information online instead of visiting the center every time I make a change in my life?
All right, so the first question, where is the center? These are exciting times, and I know majority of us just can't wait to get enrolled, but just have to wait a little bit, because the enrollment sites, which incidentally will be our major post offices across the country, there'll be 24 of them in the various parishes at the major town centers. They're currently being retrofitted in order to accommodate the enrollment sites. So as soon as those are complete, or as soon as one is complete, we will be alerting the public to say this one in this parish is ready, or that one is ready, and so you can go and enroll. The second question, updating your information. As a feature of protection, you will have to visit an enrollment site, because you have to provide proof of change of the changes that you are attempting to make to your information at an enrollment center. So you have to provide verifiable proof that these things are actually so.
Okay, just wanted you to repeat the answer. In terms of the national ID, if someone does not wish to be enrolled, is it mandatory? There are a few questions in the chat that is asking if they wish to not take part, is there any implications?
All right, okay, so if you recall, there was a legal or a court case pertaining to this national identity card, and the court ruling is that NIDS cannot be mandatory, so it is now voluntary. As a voluntary system, it means every Jamaican gets to choose whether or not they want to participate. If you don't want to participate, there is absolutely no penalty. Of course, there are benefits to participating, which we spoke about earlier. So if you don't want to participate, here is what is going to happen. You will continue to operate the exact same way you currently do. If you currently need a JP to verify your identity, you continue to do that. If you need to take 2 documents to do business with any establishment, you continue to do that. So in other words, you continue to function exactly as you do now. The difference is, for persons who have a national identity card, a lot of red tape will automatically disappear for them. So for example, as a pensioner, you have to continue to provide proof of life if you don't have this ID. So there are no one will go to jail, and nobody will be penalized or any of those things for not having the ID.
Okay. So what is happening is that we're still having challenges. I'm not certain why once we have unmute you, you're not able to unmute yourself or for us to hear you. And I'm speaking to the NIDS team that is online. They're trying to see if they can engage with us orally to respond to your questions orally. But
Hello, can you hear me now?
yes,
Are
I
you
can
hearing
hear
me?
Miss Spacey now.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Before you speak, Miss Spacey, so now that Miss Spacey is on, I'm sure she will try to address a couple of the questions. Just want to say to the justices of the peace that we have been going, it is really a 1 hour virtual session, and we're within the next 10 minutes or so after Miss Facey, and if we're able to get Custos Pitkins to unmute or Dr. Vernon, we will have them speak as well and respond to 1 or 2 more questions, but we wish to wrap up by 7:45. And we want to express appreciation to the JPs who remain. We have had nearly 400 on our YouTube platform and 343, now down to 303 on this WebEx platform. Ms. Facey, you can go ahead.
Okay, I think we had answered the last question. Had we, Nicolo?
Yes,
Okay.
if you have something to add.
Okay, repeat the question for me, please, quickly. Do you recall the question, Mrs. Wigan?
Yes, you'd have addressed it regarding the address. You had posted it in the
Okay,
chat,
right.
and I would have
Okay.
read it aloud.
Okay, all right. I'm
So-
seeing a question here in the chat. Would like to confirm if a person is a dual citizen, one being Jamaican but primarily resides overseas, will they be able to apply for the NIDS? Yes, you will be able to apply. Eligibility is based on 2 things: citizenship, or if you are ordinarily resident or a student in Jamaica. Of course, if you are ordinarily resident and for the NIDS purposes, that means you have lived in Jamaica for at least 6 months immediately before you apply. You have to be legally here. So that means that you can't just have come off of a boat and entered at the beach and you'll be able to get to enroll in the NIDS. You will have to be vetted and show proof from PICA. So for the dual citizen, once you are a citizen of Jamaica, then you can enroll from that perspective. Even if you primarily reside overseas, the eligibility is based on citizenship for you. How do you confirm that the person is the true address where the person lives? That will be a part of the vetting process. All information that is submitted must be vetted before it can be put into any of the NIDS databases. And that as well is to ensure that the NIDS databases are trusted. Only trusted information will be put in there. Someone can therefore trust the information that will be verified from that database. And also under data protection law, we are required to only have information that is correct. Unfortunately, Ms. Edwards, photographs will have to be taken at the authority because there are specific parameters that only the authority will be able to utilize. And so we won't be accepting your own passport size photos, only for children below, or babies rather, below about 5 or 6 years. How does the national ID impact other current IDs, as in the limitations of the ID? I'm not certain what that means, Mr. Sanchez. Apart from the fact that the national ID doesn't impact other IDs necessarily, because at this point in time, each of the IDs that we have looked at are all within a particular context and function within their own legal framework. And the NIDS is really only for identification purposes. So the passport is a travel document. And speaking of travel documents, someone had asked if they can use their NIC to come into the island. No, the NIC, while it is at the level of that a travel document is, from the civil aviation perspective, at this point in time, the only travel document utilized by Jamaicans would be the passport. And unless the national ID at this time is not able to be used to come into the island. Right, so the passport will still be required for traveling. The electoral ID is still required to prove that you are enumerated and that you can use it to prove your ability to vote. Driver's license at this time is still required because the legislative framework has not yet been put in place with regard to driver's licenses. However, well, there are little legislative nuances, so I won't go down that road. What is being done, though, is to ensure that the card can actually be utilized in the future. So the card's different uses are at this point not limited to only what is currently in the act, meaning that we can always use the card over time for different things. So for instance, the international access symbol will be able to be placed on the card, and the fact that you're a JP will be able to be placed on the card. As it relates to your being a JP, on the application form, what would happen is that you would indicate that you're a JP and you would be asked to provide your seal number. And then that would be placed on your card when it is actually printed. Let's see. Right, what IDs did, right, said that already. Do you change your NIDS if you change your address? Okay, so you don't change your NIDS. So the NIDS is a system. The national ID card is the card that is proof of your being in the system, is proof of your identity. The national ID number is a unique number that's assigned to you for life. So that number will never change. It's the same as what is known as the TRN if you're paying taxes. What happened with the TRN was that TAJ currently gives out a registration number. It assigns a registration number. It's just that in the past, registration numbers were only assigned for tax purposes. So it started being called taxpayer registration number. What has been done as a result of NIDS is that you can actually, knowing that some persons will not be eligible for TRN or will not want to be automatically enrolled as a taxpayer, we implemented a system where you can receive a registration number solely to enroll in the NIDS. Note, however, that if you are supposed to pay taxes, TAJ can always ensure that you do so, but from our purposes, an application may be made on your behalf during the enrollment process to Tax Administration Jamaica so that you receive this registration number that you will have for life. And that is why also some minimal information will be kept in the system, even if you decide to cancel your enrollment. And a part of the reason for that is that the whole digitization, digital transformation of Jamaica, a big part of it is also to facilitate the fight against identity theft and other forms of identity fraud. You cannot be forgotten totally because of that, because if you are forgotten, then someone can assume your identity. I'm sure we've all heard stories about persons' identities being assumed even as a baby before they reach wherever it is, and definitely of a deceased person's identity being utilized. So as a result of that, you're given a unique identifier that is yours for life. No one else will get that number. No one else can legally use that number. And the number is still yours even after you're deceased. As a result of that, we have to attach something in the system to that number. So your name, that number itself, and that sort of information, right? So that is what will be retained.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Tracy. So unfortunately, justices of the peace who have remained, 289 still on the platform, 338 on the YouTube channel. We have to wrap up tonight, but I will say to you that the Ministry of Justice is coming into each parish, and NIDS will be a part of the team, and they will be making a presentation. So we have quite a few parishes. We'll be meeting with St. Andrew Justices of the Peace tomorrow, and NIDS will be making that presentation. And the questions that were not answered, if persons from St. Andrew are still online, they can pose it there. Once we get to your parish, so we have 12 more parishes to go, and I'm sure that there's representation from each here. If your questions were not answered, once we come to your parish with NIDS and you're able to remember or to put forward a said question, they will be more than happy to respond to it. I'm really sorry that we're not able to get to all the questions, but we want to say thank you very much for your diligence and participation. We really appreciate it, and we're happy to know that you're interested in being a credible source of information to be informed on matters of national importance, in particular the NIDS identification system. So Miss Nicola Green, Miss Facey, Dr. Vernon, Costa Spitkin, Costa Staxter, who we had some challenges with, our permanent secretary minister, you are justices of the peace. We are most appreciative of your presence and participation that has made this session a success. We look forward to having more virtual sessions with you. Until next time, I'm Julia Moncrief Wigan from the Ministry of Justice. Please take care. We will be calling it George tonight. Gracias, gracias for your always engaging participation. And I look forward to seeing you again. Good night.